Thank you very much for having me. My name is Matt Cota. I own a company called Meadow Hill. We represent several different nonprofit trade associations. Among them, the Vermont Fuel Dealers Association, which represents the retailer of heating oil and propane. We also manage the Vermont Transportation Energy Network, which is a division of the Vermont Retail Grocers Association, which is membership of convenience stores and gasoline companies. So I'd love to talk about the registry as it relates to both motor fuels and heating fuels and answer any questions that you might have. I also state that I was appointed 18 months ago by the Speaker of the House to represent the fuel sector on the Vermont Climate Council. And additionally, because there is some overlap, I served on the Clean Heat Standard Equity Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee. So I've experience with that legislation and regulation as well. A couple of the mandates of line. When we look at H740 as passed the House, similar comments expressed at that time to the author of development to that committee, which is on page 1, line 21. The words are source of emissions, comma, including fuel suppliers. Now, I know the intent of that. And if you look at line 21 on page 1 of draft number 2.3.
The as passed by House version.
That one goes on the mini page. So section 1. The rules 2. The Secretary has authority to adopt rule to create a comprehensive greenhouse gas emission reporting program that covers all sources of emissions, including fuel suppliers.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. It's fine. They get me on our back.
So my recommendation is those 3 words be struck. Why? I know what the intent is. The author certainly agrees with what the intent is. Anyone else parachuting into this regulation might assume that the emissions of fuel suppliers means the fossil fuels that they use to have hot water so people can wash their hands. The fossil fuels used to keep those convenience stores warm in the wintertime. The fossil fuels used to keep the heating oil dealer retail shops warm. And of course, the diesel fuel used by those individual entities to deliver that product to those stores and homes. That's not the intent. Those 3 words should be removed. Moving on. I should also say, for the record, I voted against the climate action plan of the climate council. I was one of 6 people who voted against it, and I was the only person to vote against suggesting that this registry as constructed should pass. I want to make that clear. And one of the reasons why is if you go on to, right before you get to rulemaking, Secretary shall adopt rules on the types and volumes of all the fuels sold by sector for the transportation, residential, commercial, industrial sectors. I'm going to pause there. So we have a collection vector. You may have heard from other advocates that suggested we can't manage what we don't know. We need more data. We need more granular data. Let's just step back and say what this requires versus what is done now. The reason why we have those 3 sectors is because that's the system set up right now with the Energy Information Administration. It's how the Global Warming Solutions Act is designed. It's how we count our progress toward meeting those mandates to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% below 1990 levels by the end of this decade. So I understand why those words are there, but from a practical perspective, I live in the reality of what it's going to take to collect this information and the veracity of this information. When we deliver 9,000 gallons on a tractor trailer truck to a underground storage tank in Middlebury, we have no idea who is buying that product unless we track credit card data, which we don't do, which we shouldn't do. We have no idea where that fuel will be burned. Burned in New York, we burned in Vermont, we burned anywhere. We have no idea if that person that purchases that 12 gallons of gasoline is using it for residential, commercial, or industrial purposes. Not only do we not know, we think it's wrong for us to ask. Thus, you will not have that data. We collect fossil fuel information in two very distinct ways in Vermont. One is the transportation pool, sort of, and I'll explain that. The other is the heating fuel pool. So the transportation, we have aviation gasoline, we have gasoline, and we have clear highway diesel. That's collected on the 25th of the month, every month, using this form, either online or paper, by the Department of Motor Vehicles. Details of which are published every month and then recirculated either in one of the many directories that we put out, magazines, newsletters, websites, but they're accessible to anyone. We just put a little splash of color on them. This is just the standard form for paying your taxes. That is also disclosed on the DMV website, or you can go to Vermont10.org and we put a splash of color to make it a little bit more readable. So that is diesel fuel sold to on-road vehicles. It is aviation gasoline, and it is gasoline. So we know from this data.
Can I just ask a question about it? So is it sold? Is it the fuel that's sold at all the gas stations in Vermont?
Good question. Instead of arguing, I say that this is where this differs from diesel, and I'll get to that, but it is not. It is, okay. It is the gallon of gasoline when it crosses into Vermont, either from Quebec, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, or New York.
Okay.
That is the distributor under this terminology. If you think about it, there's wholesalers, there's distributors, and there's retailers. The distributor is someone that brings it into Vermont, yeah, and then thus pays the state and federal excise tax on that gallon.
So this is for paying the excise tax, not the gas tax at the pump.
No,
right?
No. So the gas tax at the pump is paid for by a distributor. So for instance, in 2025, again, not proprietary, private information, everyone can click and find out that in the year 2025, 59 gasoline distributors sold 286,001,707 gallons of gasoline to 468 different retail stores in Vermont. All publicly available, free for any number or anyone to grab. I just have to ask.
Okay, so this is collecting information on distributors selling it to retailers. Okay.
In some cases, that distributor may also be a retailer.
Okay.
But in many cases, that distributor is the entity that owns the tractor trailer truck that brings it from Port Albany, Port Quebec, Port Montreal, Portsmouth, Springfield, Mass, into Vermont.
Okay.
This goes upstream of the distributor.
Yes. Okay.
And then for the undyed diesel, this is the diesel that is at pumps at retail stations, or is this a different kind of diesel?
So undyed diesel, what we often call clear diesel, is highway diesel. So
okay,
my car or if someone's truck burns diesel, that's the diesel.
Okay. And then the aviation is the wholesalers selling it to our airports and the tanks in our airports or whatever.
That's the system that was set up by the legislature, again, collected and enforced by the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to be clear.
So
if you want to see it,
that study would show that 87 diesel distributors sold 29,861,369 gallons of diesel fuel in 2025. Now that is wholly different from this. So the method of collecting and where we pay the tax. So anyone selling heating oil, natural gas, electricity, kerosene, dyed diesel fuel, propane, pays on the 25th of the month, but using this form, the Vermont Tax Department. So we know when we have that there were, this is FGR 615 form, you can file it by paper or online. We know that there were 65 dyed diesel distributors sold 20,067,012 gallons of dyed diesel. And we know from that form, in the year 2025, 85 heating oil distributors sold 89,101,309 gallons of heating oil. 60 propane distributors sold 128,165,693 gallons of propane. And 59 kerosene distributors sold 5,166,919 gallons of kerosene.
Thanks, feedback. So that is the aggregate data. Do you have that broken out by county, let's say?
We don't. And here's the challenge with doing that.
Or not county, I mean, the smaller data.
No.
Okay.
Not only that, but unlike with the gallons of motor fuels, it's documents filed with the tax department, which is of course, like any tax paid by the tax department, it's unable to be disclosed to the public. What we have advocated for as an industry, and what I think other advocates in this room would do as well, is we want to make sure that we count every gallon and that we absolutely know how many gallons of heating fuel, motor fuel are sold in Vermont, are consumed in Vermont. And we have. So the question naturally is, why are we spending $500,000 year one to gather information that we already have? Question is naturally, what's the cost year over year to maintain that registry and enforce it? The question is, what is the cost to those suppliers of motor fuels and heating fuels that will have to comply with that new regulation once it's enforced? And the question is what type of data is going to be exposed to the public? Is that proprietary? Are we to tell that we have delivered 100 gallons to John Smith's house in Timoth? Does that become public record? That's a concern for us, for our customers, and for privacy. We would like to know these answers before we spend $500,000 on this product.
Great, can I switch? And then just based on, you're gonna have to, unfortunately, okay, because we're done at 11:30 today. Right, okay. I'm having a slightly deja vu moment, maybe you are too. And we talked about this a lot last session, and there was language that I think you came to feel at least more comfortable with. Do you know what I'm talking about? Is that something that would be acceptable, or are you just hard no on all of it? I can't remember all the language. I literally just remember this as you were sitting in the chair.
So, yes, that's correct. So, the language that we suggested was to alter what was the clean heat registry.
Right.
And if I may, the reason why we suggested it is the clean heat still very much a viable option in January, February of last year.
Right.
It's not now.
Right.
But one of the reasons, and there are lots of reasons why people blame for that policy failure. But as someone who lived with that regulation for 5 years, that served on the technical advisory committee, that served on the committee.
But there was a specific thing about the collection of data that we were talking about. That was in that bill.
Yes, it was a clean heat registry, a fuel registry for heating fuel suppliers.
Right, and I thought that my recollection is, and maybe we should just talk offline, because my recollection is that we came to some kind of language that you felt comfortable with in the end. I mean, it didn't pass, but as a part of a 65. Yeah. I could just,
I can't recall the specific language. I can say clearly, the problem with the clean heat registry.
That wasn't the thing. It was.
Yeah.
It was an update too. Yeah. It was a modernizing. It was a revisioning of the.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It just flashed in the light. What we wanted, and we achieved, is with the form that is in Senator Beck's hands, was we pay taxes. So many of the people that sell propane, sell biodiesel, sell kerosene, sell heating oil, it's the same. And yet the tax department, since 1990, just said, add up all your gallons, multiply it by what was 0.05, now it's 2 cents per gallon, send us the money. And I always thought, well, that's horrible. Now we're not able to tell how many gallons of propane versus heating oil. I track this data as part of my company, so I want to know exactly that. So I advocated personally for, let's break it out.
Okay.
And
This is what I remember, and so that was the result of our conversations last year, is breaking it out on the task form.
this is wonderful.
And this is new.
This is new as of, July 1, 2024.
Oh,
25.
okay, because my recollection was that the tax department basically was voluntary.
Well,
I didn't tell them to do. Exactly. We had a conversation about it, they were like, don't make us do it. And
so
that's at least what I remember.
that's certainly,
Yeah.
yes, that's correct, but it certainly helped emphasize that, underscoring it in terms of making it happen, because it's something we've been asking for a long time.
Right, because I remember that we had this very conversation,
Yeah.
and and we were gonna put that in the bill. But the bill never went anywhere, but they did it anyway. Okay.
And the why I was able to stay down to the gallon, how many gallons of kerosene versus diabetes were sold. Before I would come before this committee under previous iterations and say, according to EIA data, and there would be a couple of zeros at the end because it was based on estimate. Now I know to the gallon, how many gallons of kerosene versus heating oil. I can tell you that is the power. Yes.
The once the tax department, the aggregate data is public, it's just not the detail. Okay.
So the detail that is what is concerning is twofold. One is, if we are to release data on where we're selling, there's some privacy concerns. I think this industry, the heating fuel industry, in particular, is dominated by small businesses. With a name on the side of the truck, it's usually the person driving the truck.
They also own retention lists.
Some of them are and we're concerned with any additional regulations, which makes it harder for those small, competitive businesses to remain uncompetitive to the larger players. And more regulations will consequently do that. And that's why the smallest dealers are so opposed to the big standard for large dealers.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Cota at this point? Right. Thank you so much.